All right, so this is a big chunk of white oak. This is a steel 461 with a 25-inch bar. So you can see, you know, there's probably a 30-inch diameter log. And I've been wanting to do platters and stuff. And then what I'll do is there's predominant checking vertically coming out of the pith. So I aligned the log and I stuck some wood up under it so it'll stay that way. And we're going to try and get most of that splitting in a quarter sawn board right here. Hey, what's up, friends? Ray with Dr. Timworks. How y'all doing? All right, now this is how I make my bowl blanks, or in this case, platter blanks or shallow bowl blanks. As you see me going through there, I'm going through the side of the log, not the top of the log. And this is a lot easier on your back, a lot easier on your saw. When you go through the top of the log, well, you know, the face of the log, you're cutting into end grain. And end grain is just miserable stuff to cut through. The only people that really cut that way are millers, and they're milling slabs that are really long. If you have a bar long enough to go through a short round like this, going through the side grain is the way to go. Alright, so now what I do is I leave a couple of inches down there at the bottom as holding wood. So this don't split apart and it stays whole. It's easier to saw on it when it's whole. Okay, and you can see how easy this saw cuts through this. Well, I mean, I'm not muscling the saw around. This is just smooth, easy motions. I rock on the dogs a little bit and just make these cuts. I'll tell you what, that stuff was nasty, man. I sucked all that stuff in there. I wish I had a dust mask on for that spot. Right through there, it got incredibly easy to cut. It's rotten in there. I sharpened my other saw. It's getting way better. That one ain't cutting straight. I didn't do as good as a sharpening job on it. Watch out, you got a saw behind you.
Bees everywhere.
the bees were attacking my wife while she was filming. They don't usually bug me. I don't know if it's a combination of like the noise and the vibration or the smoke that the saw puts out, the exhaust, but they don't mess with me much at all. But so, you know, the key to making bowl blanks, I believe, is you have to have a powerful saw. The first saw I was using was a steel 461, and that's a 75cc saw. This is a Echo 620, and this is a 60cc saw, 62cc, but whatever, you know. And it's a pro saw, and I've also modded the muffler on it to increase horsepower and flow. So why I switched saws was I didn't sharpen my chain as good as I could have and was getting kind of crooked cuts. They were kind of leaning to one side. So I did a much better job sharpening this chain. And so I just, instead of swapping chains around and everything, I just swapped saws and finished these cuts out. And you seen down there, that pile of noodles was so thick and deep that I had to stop, move them out of the way, because there's kind of a trick if you're kind of new to sawing and using your chainsaw. But if you keep your saw perfectly level when you cut down towards the ground, if you don't have your bar dipped down and the nose angled downwards, your bar is actually angled upwards and you cannot hit the ground if you keep your saw level. You can see it right there. If my saw is angled down flat like that, the bar is facing upwards and you cannot touch the ground unless you torque it upwards and lever the nose into the ground. Then that's on you. And I'm also really comfortable with my chainsaws. You see me do some things where I'll stick the nose in, and then I'll feather the throttle, and that pulls the saw into the wood where I want it to go, instead of, you know, trying to find the slot. But you'll also notice that I feather the throttle at this. I don't just whiskey throttle in there and just gun it the whole time. You know, you got to use a little bit of control and a little bit of finesse with these saws. You don't have to be wide open the whole time. A lot of times I'll know when I'm close is by the chips change color. When you transition from the heartwood into the sapwood, and then from the sapwood into the bark. So like if I know I'm close, a lot of times I'll just stop and, you know, just spread it apart by hand sometimes, rather than risk dipping my nose down into the ground and dulling my chain and hitting rocks and sand.
Where's our piece with the pith in it? Out of gas. Of course.
Bees.
She was complaining about the bees again. But what this is the one platter piece that had the pith in it, and so now I'm cutting on either side of the pith again just to get that out of there. And then I got two nice, you know, those are probably what, 14, 16 inch, you know, quarter saw planks on either side of that. It's really nice pieces right there. And I'm struggling a little bit, and she helped me out. She come up here and stood on it for me. Atta girl, that's a good woman.
So there's our gnarly old pith. That's why you want to get it out of there. It's all instability, and that's where all the cracking and crap begins. This particular log had rot in it, and that's where you seen these logs here. But that's still a big usable piece right there.
Okay.
So this is the log I cut up earlier. This is white oak. Hauled this off yesterday. I got ideas for thinner projects. I'm not going to tell you what they are right now, but I got the hamster spinning that wheel. I got some ideas. But they're basically heavy platter sized blanks, 2 to 3 inches thick. You know, I don't measure nothing. But I'm done enough huffing and puffing for today. Thanks, friends.
Alright, I'm sorry for this part here. It's a little bit loud in the shop with the dust collection on. I have it hooked up to my bandsaw, and then when the bandsaw kicks on, it's pretty loud too. But I'm just showing you one of the techniques I like to use for sealing the end grain of my bowl and platter blanks, if you will, is shrink wrap. To me, this is the cheapest option, and it's also the cleanest option. You don't get wax and glue and paint or everything else anywhere. You know, you have to wrestle with it a little bit, but man, this stuff works great, and it's pretty much my go-to way to seal blanks now. Okay, so look, doing it this way, my end grain is completely sealed, both sides of the end grain. Okay, side grain doesn't matter. This lets it breathe so it doesn't mold and mildew and all that stuff. Well, look at that, I missed a spot of end grain. Like it matters. I mean, all you're doing is slowing it down. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. It's not rocket science. It ain't a nuclear reactor. So I think that's where a lot of people, like when you go into the Facebook comment sections in the different groups, people fret over sealing the end grain like nobody's business. And they think and they act like if you seal it, that it's going to miraculously not check, not split, and not, you know, it's kind of ridiculous. It's wood. All you're doing is slowing down the moisture loss. That's it. You're not stopping it. You're trying to control and minimize the movement and checking. But man, your best bet is to, once you cut that tree down, is to start processing it as soon as possible. Because I've played with this for the last year and a half, and the longer that wood sits, the more it's going to split, no matter what you do to it. You can cut the pith out, you can wax it, you can glue it, you can paint it, you can seal it with that wrap. It's going to start splitting and cracking until you get it down to under an inch even thickness. And then, you know, cutting out a lot of that material removes a lot of tension, and it removes a lot of bulk, and it can dry at an even rate. The whole idea for the roughing of the bowls is you get everything down to the same diameter and thickness, and everything dries at the same rate then. You don't have hard, you know, and you round off the corners. So you don't have hard edges that dry faster than the bigger flat edges. You want everything to dry at the same time, so something doesn't move faster than the other. That's all it is. And so a lot of people put a lot into it, and the only thing I can tell you from my experience is get to turning that wood as fast as you can, because the longer it sits on your shelf, the more cracked it's going to get into it, no matter what precautions you take. There is a kiln drying process, and I tried that on these blanks, and I failed miserably. I ruined most of these blanks, to be honest. I'm not going to lie. There's ways to do it. I put them into my refrigerator kiln after they had dried for a couple of weeks, and I just chucked them in there at 105 degrees, and I got busy working out of town for 2 or 3 weeks, and they split like nobody's business. There's a more controlled method where you put them in at 70 degrees for a week, you put them in at 80 degrees for like 2 weeks, and you know, there's guys that do this professionally. I'm a hobby guy, and you know, it's a bummer. I messed up most of these blanks, to be honest. But you know, it's a learning process. You might have seen those in the background. I've got a lot of wood. I've got a ton of logs left, and you know what? More and more show up every day on Marketplace. I've got a wood hoarding problem, but I have found out that you don't need to hoard wood, because I mean, literally every day where I live, at least, there's 5 new posts in my area of people begging you to come and haul off their trees. And it's walnut, it's cherry, it's oak, it's box elder, it's all the stuff that people want. So enough about that. Let's get back on to what's going on. So I'm just showing you how I use my bandsaw to break down some of these planks. If you can see on there, I've got 13.5-inch circle templates, and that's because I have a 14-inch swing lathe. So that's about the biggest size I can go. I can go outboard, but it's a difficult process for finishing and removing the 10 end and all that. Until I get a bigger lathe, I'm just going to work within the inboard status. I might go outboard every now and then, you know, maybe get a better feel for it, but for right now, you know, whatever. You know, the 13.5 inches turned down to about 12 inches finished product, and that's nice. That's for the average person, that's good enough for their needs and their wants. So, but what I want you to see here is, because the wood was so big, I had so much extra space that I'm not, you know, I'm tossing the corners, and I don't actually toss those per se. I make charcoal out of them and I burn them. But there's a lot of side pieces that I tossed off to the side and I'll come back to, and I make a bunch of little square blanks out of those, because small squares are easy to turn. I don't even bother knocking the corners off them. It's not even worth it. when you get into the bigger pieces up to 10, 12 inches, yes, you want the corners off. But a little 4x4 or a 6x6 square, you'll have that thing round in no time, and it won't beat you to death. Believe me, I've done so many of them, it's not even funny. Those corners are gone in if you know, in a matter of minutes, not even minutes, but I mean seconds almost. It takes one or two passes with a gouge, and it's round. So I turn a lot of square blanks just because you know, I don't like pushing my luck and getting my fingers in there when they don't need to be. The bandsaw is an easy way to get hurt. I did it with a cheap bandsaw that I bought off Marketplace, and a dull blade and inexperience, and I almost lost my thumb because of it. So I'm real cautious of it now. And I hope you saw that in some of the stuff earlier, where when I'm cutting the circles, I stand off to the side. I don't go into the blade. And when I do go into the blade, when I'm cutting off, I make sure, you know, I'm well clear of it. And I know people are going to say, where's your push stick? Well, you know, I'm not going to use a push stick if I've got 4 inches of material on either side. You know, you'll see me, I kind of grab another piece of wood when it's close. But, you know, like there's plenty of clearance. I'm not going to get hurt. So what I'm doing is, unfortunately, I have more wood than I have time. So by the time I showed the chainsaw part and then got to this bandsaw part, was a matter of weeks, if not months, where these platter slabs just dried and checked, and you know, there's checking 2 to 3 inches deep into it in some places, you know, because they were cut thin and they were able to dry fast. So what I'm doing is I'm going on these large pieces, I'm trying to cut out the big checks, and I'm cutting along the big checks, trying to get useful material out of it, and trying to, you know, cut it down into smaller pieces along those checking lines, so those checking lines don't go further and get deeper. So a lot of these cool, like you know, that little piece over there that's kind of a rectangle, man, that's a nice box. You know, that's a nice white oak box, or pencil pot, any multitude of projects you can make with these scraps. They turn good, and they're practice, and you can make some really cool, fun little projects with this stuff. But that, again, to reiterate, the best thing that you can do is when you start doing this for yourself, DIY, hobby guy, save some money and cut your own wood up, you got to get to turning it. Stockpiling it and putting it on a shelf is not going to end well for you. Well, it might end well for you. I don't know. It don't end well for me where I'm at. You know, I've got a garage. It's usually got a fan blowing on it, or if it's above freezing, I usually have the door open and the wind blowing. So, you know, it is what it is. I don't have a conditioned area. And I've got plenty of wood that has split and cracked, and I did everything I could to try and avoid it. And, you know, I know it's not just me, because some of my favorite videos where this one's kind of actually influenced from is Richard Rappin at the bandsaw, you know, and he shows you how to take a plank that sat for too long and it split and cracked, and then he does what I'm doing, and he goes along the check marks and the splits, and he cuts along them, and he will take a bowl blank that would have been, you know, 14 inches, and then cuts it down into 5 or 6 little mini bowls, which are still cool, man. He looks like he's having a good time. I'm having a good time. You know, I like turning small bowls just as I like, as much as I do maxing out my lathe. So that's just what's going on. I'm showing you this white oak project that I had, and you know, I let you know how it ended up. All the squares survived pretty good. Those are all, I'm thinking I'm going to cut those again, kind of maybe use the fence as a guide to kind of almost resaw them and get a bunch of little cocktail smoker blanks out of them. Now see, I love this. I love what I do. I haven't really bought any blanks and tried to use them, but I love the fact that I sit there and I choose what I want, and I'm in control of this bowl or this platter or this box from every aspect of it. You know, I cut the big blanks down, I cut the small blanks down, I decide which way I want the grain orientated. I have total control from log to finished product by doing this myself. I guess that's just the way I am. But when you buy stuff and buy product from other people, you're at their mercy. And you know, sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not. I've seen some really crazy high-end figured wood that I haven't come across yet that people buy. That's cool. But I have, you know, I guess I take pride in the fact that I create something and do something from the start to the finish. The only thing I don't do is I don't drop the tree. I'm not a tree faller. I'm not a tree climber. I just go haul off the stuff that's on the ground. But other than that, you know, I control the process, and I decide how it looks and why it looks and all that good stuff. You know what I mean? It's just, it's more me, you know. When I choose this, when I saw a little piece of grain that made me put the circle on that side rather than the other side, there's a reason for it. This is just such an amazing, you know, hobby and trade or craft where you have so limitless possibilities. You know, I've barely scratched the surface. You know, I'm kind of the round and brown type guy. And, you know, but I love this hobby, and thank you all for following me along on it. And I hope y'all appreciate the video and gather something from it. So we'll catch you next time, friends.